So let's dive into something that sounds a little out there, financial astrology. But I want you to forget everything you think you know about fortune telling. We're going to treat this as a structured system for market timing. Think of it less like magic and way more like learning to read a very, very complex cosmic timetable.
Okay, check this out. This prediction, it sounds almost silly, right? It's so obvious. And why is it obvious? Because it's based on a published schedule, a known timetable. Now, sure, flights get delayed, things happen, so it's not 100% perfect, but it's still pretty darn reliable. Financial astrology, at its core, works off the very same idea, reading a cosmic schedule that's shown consistent patterns over and over again throughout history. And the tool for this isn't some mystical crystal ball. Nope. It's this, an ephemeris. You can think of it as literally the official airline guide for the planets. It's just a big book of tables showing where every planet is on any given day. By looking at what happened in the markets when planets were in similar spots in the past, analysts try to find patterns that repeat. It's all about historical correlation.
So, here's our game plan for this masterclass. We'll start with who the cosmic players are. Then we'll zoom out to look at the massive economic cycles they influence. From there, we'll drill down into the short-term triggers. We're also going to cover a really important secret rule called planetary integrity. Then we'll put it all together in a real-world case study. And finally, I'll give you a simple observation you can start tracking yourself.
First things first, we gotta meet the members of our cosmic orchestra. See, in this system, not all planets are created equal. They each have a very specific job to do when it comes to setting the rhythm and, the timing of the market.
So here's the division of labor. On one side, you've got the slow outer planets. These are the heavyweights. Think of them as setting the long-term economic climate. They're the big trendsetters. On the other side, you've got the fast-moving inner planets. They're more like the daily weather. They don't create the climate, but man, they can act as the perfect little triggers that set off the potential that's already been built up by the big guys.
Okay, so let's see how these players work together. We're zooming way out now, from the individual instruments to the huge multi-decade symphonies that really form the backbone of this kind of long-wave economic thinking. And right at the heart of it all is the Jupiter-Saturn cycle. The ancient Greeks actually called it the great marker of time. Here's the thinking. Jupiter is the planet of expansion, optimism, basically the greed factor in the market. Saturn, on the other hand, is all about contraction, limits, and caution. That's your fear factor. So their 20-year dance together is seen as this foundational rhythm of investor confidence and the entire business cycle. And this is where it gets really interesting. The legendary trader W.D. Gann always talked about something he called a master time factor. And many believe he was talking about 3 of these Jupiter-Saturn cycles back to back, which is, you guessed it, about 60 years. Now look how neatly that overlays with the well-known 60-year Kondratiev long-wave economic cycle. It really suggests there's some kind of deep, fundamental rhythm connecting what's happening up there with our economic tides down here.
But you're probably asking, how could that possibly work? Well, there's a proposed physical mechanism that's actually pretty compelling. So, the sun isn't perfectly still. The massive gravity of Jupiter and Saturn actually pulls it into a little wobble around the solar system's true center of mass. This wobble is believed to affect solar activity, things like sunspots, which in turn can impact Earth's climate. And from there, it's a pretty clear domino effect. Climate affects crops and commodities, which then drives interest rates, and ultimately, the stock market.
All right, so we've looked at the long-term climate. Now let's zoom right back in and look at the daily weather, those short-term triggers that can really spark volatility and signal potential turning points in the market. Here are just a few specific signals that traders keep an eye on. Full moons, they're notorious for cranking up the market's volatility. Eclipses are basically full moons on steroids. They can signal really dramatic shifts. You've got an aspect like Venus trine Uranus, which has a pretty solid track record of coming before a market rise. And get this, when Jupiter appears to move backward in the sky, what we call retrograde, the Dow has moved sideways or lower during that period in 17 of the last 20 times it happened. I mean, come on, that's an incredibly consistent pattern. Okay, now for a really crucial piece of the puzzle, and this is something most people miss. This is what separates just, casual observation from professional level application. It turns out not all of those planetary flights arrive on schedule. And understanding this idea of planetary integrity is absolutely key to refining any prediction. So here's the secret sauce. You got to think of the planets as having different personalities when it comes to timing. Mars, the planet of action and aggression, is always impatient. Its effects tend to land before the exact date of the aspect. Uranus, the innovator, is known for being pretty reliably on time. But Saturn, the planet of caution and delay, is almost always late to the party. This simple rule is huge because it explains why a bear market might not actually hit its low until after the exact planetary date has already passed.
Let's just lock this in. A Mars signal, we'll color code this red, means you look for an early arrival. A Saturn signal, which we'll code in blue, means you look for a late arrival. Just remembering this one filter can make a world of difference when you're reading that cosmic timetable. Keep these colors in mind because we're about to see them in action.
All right, theory time is over. Let's put this stuff to the test with one of the biggest market events ever, the crash of 1987. And to do it, we're going to use a really cool analogy from a brilliant financial astrologer named Charles Jane. So Jane said that a major market event is like an old 5-cylinder lock. It just won't open until every single one of those tumblers clicks perfectly into place. You need the big outer planets to set the stage, you need the fast inner planets to prepare the trigger, and you need even more precise factors to pinpoint the exact time and place. The point is, one single indicator is never enough. You need everything to line up. So let's see how the 1987 crash was unlocked. Back in August, you had a major alignment of the outer planets. That set the stage, tumbler number 1. Then in September, a solar eclipse created a sensitive target spot in the zodiac, tumbler 2. Then, on October 6th, look what happens. That impatient, early-arriving Mars crosses that exact eclipse target. Bam, the trigger is pulled. And just 13 days later, on October 19th, the final tumbler clicks into place, and the market absolutely implodes. And this kind of analysis can also give you tools for spotting market traps. For instance, by combining the energy of Saturn, which relates to bottoms, and Neptune, which relates to illusion, analysts were able to flag several false bottoms during the long Japanese bear market. And you can do the opposite too. Combining Jupiter, which is expansion, with Neptune's illusion can be a great tool for spotting potential false tops, markets that are just running on irrational hype. Okay, now let's pull all these threads together and anchor them to something solid and real, the birth chart of the New York Stock Exchange itself. This chart acts like a base map that helps us track how these big cosmic events actually impact the market. That's right, just like a person has a birthday, an entity like the NYSE has a moment it was created, May 17th, 1792. And that chart basically acts as its financial DNA. The theory is, when the planets moving through the sky today, what we call transits, hit sensitive points in that original 1792 chart, it triggers a reaction in the institution itself. And this is where the light bulb really goes on. Remember that October 6th trigger date we talked about? Well, the lunar eclipse that day happened at the exact same degree as the midheaven in the NYSE's original chart. And the midheaven represents its public reputation and standing. So, at the very same time our red Mars trigger was going off, this eclipse was hitting the stock exchange's reputation point. It was a perfect double hit, a textbook signal that a major public crisis for the exchange was right around the corner. Whew, we have covered a ton of ground, from the huge, long-term cycles down to the tiny triggers and timing rules. So the big question is, how can you start actually watching for these patterns yourself? Let's break it down into a super simple process. Here's an easy 2-step way to start. Step 1, identify the climate. Just ask yourself, where are we in that big 20-year Jupiter-Saturn cycle? Is the general economic feeling one of optimism and expansion, or is it more cautious and contractive? Step 2, watch for the weather. Keep an eye out for a specific trigger, like when fast-moving Mars crosses over the degree of a recent eclipse. You don't even have to predict what's going to happen. Just notice if any significant market volatility follows. This simple exercise shifts you from just being a passive learner to an active observer of these cycles. So, at the end of the day, it leaves us with a really powerful question. We all know that markets are just a big dance between two human emotions, fear and greed. Could it be that these vast, predictable, cyclical movements of the planets are simply the hidden rhythm, the cosmic beat that's calling the tune for that dance? It's definitely something to think about.